Is age just a number? Well, today we're talking to a client of mine, Chris, and he's had several joint replacements from both hips and knee. He is now back to fencing at Olympic level against Olympians, and yet he still strives to do better. He's truly inspiring, so stay tuned. I'm Emily Mitchell, and this is Inspire Sports Physio Podcast.
Oh, but thank you so much for today, Chris. So, obviously, I've known you for a while now, haven't I? So when did we start? That was a couple of months ago. But so, for those that don't know you, can you just explain a little bit about who you are, your professional background, your sporting history, and we'll go from there.
I'm Chris Silvey, and I did 5 years after leaving school in things like telecoms and the rail transport industry. Then I did a full career, 30 years in the Royal Air Force. And after that, I did a few years across at Stafford with a company, Perkins, that does big generator engines, size of transit vans that provide emergency power or permanent power for places around the world. During all that time, quite a few different activities in terms of climbing, cycling, my fencing primarily, and walking in the hills, etc. And a lot of activities in the service where probably putting quite a bit of strain and stress and sort of long-term knocks and bumps and what have you, but it's all part of the nature of going through life, really. But it never really bothered me as such. I've had a few operations over the years and a few injuries and so on, like a lot of people. But I'm somebody who is active and likes to do things. So if you do that, you're going to get the occasional issues. And I suppose, really, as far as operations and things like that go, I've had a few. The major ones being both hips and now just recently my knee. In most of those cases, not really an issue. It's not something that bothered me in the slightest. As they were getting to the point where they were serious enough to really need doing, and we were pushing it with the consultant at the time to make them last as long as possible, then you start getting into a bit of trouble and a lot of pain and very restricted movement. And then you know it's just got to be done. But recovering from the hips was really quite quick. They were done at separate times, several years apart. Several weeks, really, and then walking around normally, what have you. And I found with the hips, it was actually, I was on the bike cycling before I was walking. At least walking without sticks and what have you. Yeah. Because it was great for having one side doing the pedalling, the other just being driven round, giving that range of movement. So flexing things without putting a lot of strain on muscles and that sort of thing. So that really helped with that.
Was this your pedal bike or static bike?
Pedal bike, yes. Yeah, I didn't have a static bike in those days. I used to just lean against a shelving and hold on to that, keep myself steady. But then very quickly out actually cycling round as well, not just keeping still. So that worked very well, and both hips are still going at the moment. Got a few squeaks and what have you, but they're not breaking down or anything. And I actually got back to good strength and ranges of movement and back into the climbing and fencing and so on. The knee was different. It by far the most painful of the various operations I've had or replacement things that I've had, and it's much more difficult to actually progress it by using the joint and the flex and so on. And you can't just get on your bike, it can with the hips, because you can't flex it.
Yeah.
So I found that with that, the worst bit by far wasn't actually the joint. or the pain around the knee and the wound and the swelling. It was actually for me, the IT band bit up the side of the thigh, which was really quite bad, and difficult to progress. But that aside, after maybe fourth week, that was starting to get under control. And I find with all these things, it's the best way not to try and push it, but to do a lot often, a lot of little things often.
Yeah.
Even just stretching a bit or doing half a lunge or something, go around the kitchen, preparing your food and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
We've got stairs, so going up and down the stairs lots of times every day, but steadily, just frequent movements, moving books around or moving something in the shed.
Yeah.
Is enough just to keep it moving, get the circulation going, and not worry about set amounts of progress, because you suddenly find 3 weeks later, oh, that's better. And then 3 months later, oh, that's changed as well. And it just does it for itself.
Yeah.
So I found that worked quite well. Up to the point where you're then strong enough to start putting proper pressure on and strain on to start building the muscles up better, and increasing the range of flexibility and so on. That combination, I think, worked quite well. Yes, so
I find that really inspiring, the fact that you've had almost 3 opportunities just to stop, because that's what I see a lot in my career, is a lot of people have an operation, whether it be a knee replacement or just a simple operation, then they just stop doing what they're doing because they think that means I can no longer do the sport. So the fact that you've had 3 opportunities to stop, but you've persevered each time and you've almost come back even stronger. So, and having the conversations with you, you're always really eager and really persevering to go, I want to be better, I still want to be stronger, I still want more range of movement, and I want to be back to the level that I was before. And I find that really inspiring, so well done you. What is it that drives the drive?
I think ever since being a youngster, I'm an older brother, we were always into sport of various sorts, cycling a lot around London where we were brought up, working on cars, that sort of thing, when old enough. But I've always been somebody who wants to be doing things and moving. The human body needs to move. It's made to move, not just sit sedentary, not doing anything. So I can watch a film or have a couple of drinks and feet up or what have you, like anybody, but I can't do that day after day for hours and hours and hours. I need to be moving, doing things. And when things like knowing there was big operations coming up at various points, there was never a point where I thought, well, I'm not going to be doing fencing anymore or walking much or whatever. It was only a question of when I was going to be getting back to it and how soon I could get to a reasonable level again. So I think, people talk about having a positive outlook and so on. I don't think it's even that particularly. It's just I like doing things and moving around and having exercise and what have you. So there was never any question I was going to be getting back doing that.
Yeah, and as well, fencing, it is really quite hard on the body, especially after the knee. So how have you found coming back, actually now getting back into the sport after all the hips and the knees? You get in there, you really are getting back to a good level.
Well, with the knee, it's 8 months this week actually, and it is very dynamic, and you can get some quite heavy forces on the joints, not just the knees, but hips, shoulders, neck, and so on. And I found that just building up steadily. One of the big things is a lot of sort of memory in your mind of the enjoyment and the movements and so on, as well as muscle memory and so on, which it just wants to be doing it again. I've done this for a very long time, and it's you very quickly know, your body knows straight away whether you want to push it further, and then you do once you get past the immediate repair issues of the wound and that sort of thing, and the muscles are just starting to appear again and be noticeable again. Then I found that you could just push things a little bit beyond comfort. And then the next day you'll ache a little bit and you'll have a bit of swelling that's come back. But that's the nature of normal building up of repair and building up of muscles and so on. Even if you haven't had an operation, you're not training in the gym or something,
Yeah.
you have to go beyond comfort, don't you? And that stretches and strains the muscles a little bit, and ligaments and so on. And then they repair, and then they're stronger and better. And it's the same process, really, I found after these operations. You just have to wait long enough before you put too much strain on a new wound, or a new areas that have had the operation. You wait a little bit for them to settle down, get as much movement in as you can, and then when it feels comfortable enough, push it a little bit. And I still get aches. I was fencing last night, a good session, a reasonable amount of ache and a bit of swelling back again, but that will go down over, well, it won't be today because I'm fencing again this evening, but then tomorrow that will subside again, and it will be stronger and fitter progressively over several weeks or month or two. Yeah.
And we've started to progress your program a little bit, haven't we? For a bit more fencing dynamic, a lot more sort of plyometric type exercise. How are you getting on with those?
Getting on pretty well. There's one still I am not that great at yet, which is the skating one, but I'm making progress on that because of the weight on the joint with the twisting and turning at the same time.
Yeah.
And keeping the balance and trying to do it properly rather than sort of falling around and what have you.
Yeah.
It's coming along, but there's a bit more work to do yet, which is quite good in a sense, because it's an area I know then that's going to be better for the future that possibly wasn't even all that good originally anyway.
Yeah.
So it's a useful thing. And the range of exercises is really good, actually. It's even with the wide range of things I've done over the years with fencing and other things, it's added extra things in to do with movement at the same time as balance, and trying to use power and dynamics, and it's starting to help quite a lot, actually.
Good. And I find it really interesting how I remember when one of our first sessions we had together, you was mentioning how with all the aircraft things that you've done in the past, that you've got a little bit more of appreciation of the biomechanics of the body and the way you need to push things and do things. And do you feel that that's had an impact in your recoveries, having a bit more of that knowledge from not the body's biomechanics, but from an appreciation for biomechanics? Definitely,
yes. I mean, one thing years and years ago, for very early days of fencing, it's one of those sports that can be quite one-sided. So whenever I was training, as in the stretching and strengthening and that sort of thing over the years, I used to do that both sides anyway. But then a few years back, I'd had an operation on the right hand and wrist, and couldn't use that for a while to do fencing. And so I thought, well, I'll try left-handed, borrowed some gear and what have you. And within a month, I was fencing almost the same levels as right-handed. That's a few years ago now. And I found the biggest thing with it was the mirror image effect. Because if you're doing set-piece movements, it would be fine. But if you're reacting suddenly to somebody else's movements, so that wasn't the plan. You reacted as if it was the mirror image right hand, because you'd done that for so many years. But after a month, I got a handle on that, and it's been fine. And it went so well that for all the years since, I've always fenced left-handed and right-handed. I swap, because it's having had so many various operations, replacements and so on. I've had a few on my hand and wrist as well. Inevitably you get a knock or you get a pain and ache and what have you on one side. So that's fine, just swap the other side for several weeks. And when you've had enough on that side, you swap back again. And that has actually turned out really well. So I find that really good to manage all of the different things going on, because there's no way of stopping.
Yeah. So I find that really quite interesting, actually, about doing everything both left and right. Do you feel that maybe because of the fencing you're a little bit more ambidextrous in day-to-day life now, or is that just purely for fencing that you can do things left and right?
I think I was a little bit anyway, and it's just become a bit more accessible, if you like, a bit more emphasised through having done the fencing for a few years now with it. So it varies with different things. And if I try right left-handed, that's going to be a disaster. But you can train to do that. People do when they've had an injury and what have you. But I've just had no need for it. But things which like fetching and carrying and fencing, if I want to do something and it's awkward to get at, when they're working on the tractor or something, and you do it left-handed, tightening nuts and bolts and so, yes, absolutely, yeah. Making cups of tea and that sort of thing,
Yeah,
is easy both sides. So, and I find that's very good. So that one thing that fencing is very good for, and it's improved by doing both sides, is balance, but balance under movement as well.
dynamic.
And that's I find that's something that was therefore that very easy to get back very quickly after a hip operation, knee operation, because it's inherently there in the back of your mind. And of course, we know more and more these days that, especially with people getting a few more years behind them, balance is one of the biggest things of all the things that sort of go wrong with in latter years. Balance is one of the biggest, and if that's not working, all sorts of other things happen. Like people retreat from doing things because they're worried about falling, or walking into things. So that reduces the amount of activity, reduces their ability to balance even further. Confidence goes. Once the confidence goes, it's a bit of a problem. One of the other big things that they do is Nordic walking. There's a very active group where we are here in this part of the Peak District, and there are some people who are really quite old, in the late 70s, even in the early 80s, and beyond. A couple of whom have had one or two problems with, had a knock or an injury, whatever, had a bit of a gap, and then found I was struggling a bit with balance and so on, reluctant to get back in. But when you manage to persuade them back, because this group that we have has something going on every day of the week virtually, right from very, very simple, no high level of dynamic exercise or anything like that, literally just ambling around a local flat park area, and with a group of people that you know and that you're happy with, and they get back into it, do a few steps again and think, oh, I want to come back now, and do a few more steps, and then they'll walk around Alistry Park or wherever, and a few weeks later they're back to doing a normal 5 kilometre Nordic walk. And the confidence is back, and that's probably the biggest thing of all, the confidence. Followed by balance, and the two are interrelated, of course.
And believe it or not, that's actually something that we do. What we get taught at physio school is called backward chaining. So where we actually teach when frail elderly patients, when they start to get to that level where they've got lack of confidence and they actually start to have some falls, we start to teach them, okay, having that confidence, if they do fall on the floor, what can they do in their home environment so they feel safe that they can actually find a way to get back up just to sit in, because a lot of people unfortunately do have what we call a long lie, so they get stuck on the floor, and then that leads to hospitality and things like that. So but yeah, so it's using things like little footstools and things to teach and give them that confidence, but it is a downward spiral. So the fact that you're still doing such high level dynamic balance in the fencing is amazing. I remember when I first tested your balance, and I was like, wow, you've got better balance than me.
I don't think so.
And I could help it on horses, and I thought my balance was good. But yeah, so that's amazing. That's your physical element's amazing. What about diet and nutrition? So I remember when we first started chatting, I was like, oh, what are you eating for tea? I'd hear a lot about steaks, and you're quite good with your nutrition. So is that something you're quite good at?
I think over the decades, I don't follow diets. I never have done. And over the decades, I've had a bit of a seafood diet. In other words, I eat what I want when I want. Sometimes quite a lot, but then if you're quite active and you're burning it off, then why not? You've got to replace it somehow. Excuse me. But also, one thing that we have found with when I've had operations, that sort of thing, I always lose a lot of blood and a lot of the various blood platelets and what have you, various sorts, that leave me quite anemic immediately after the operation, and it goes on for days. I'm always last out or another day out after everybody else who's in the ward who's had the same operation, because the blood's so low. And even had IV drips and what have you as well to put stuff back in. And so because of that, with things like iron and what have you, because I like things like steak and beef and what have you anyway, then I'll have steak sandwiches and beef and so on, and build it up again, so you sort of tilt the diet, if you like, the way that helps a bit more with that. I've always drunk a lot of milk and that sort of thing, so protein and that sort of things that I've never been fussed by. Oat milk drinks and skim milk and that sort of thing. We were brought up on the real thing, and I never changed. I don't criticise one way or the other what somebody should or shouldn't have, but I enjoy it and I find it works for me, and puts that bit of protein back in and a bit of iron back in and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's amazing. So would you feel that now, after all your operations, where do you feel in comparison to before, when you were fencing without any replacements? Do you feel that you're at sort of you're back to where you were? You're not quite there? You've gone past it?
I would say pretty similar overall, with some bits not quite as good and other bits better. So obviously the knee is still not going to do really dynamic flashing where you're sort of launching yourself off, and or multiple landing very heavily and what have you, but I am actually at a pretty active level with it at the moment already, and knowing that it's working it fairly hard and then getting that bit more ache and a bit more swelling back, and then that goes again, as we were saying earlier, a day or so later. So I would say overall as good as it was before.
Amazing. So that is so inspiring, the fact you've had all these replacements and you're at the same sort of level. So it really is unstoppable. It doesn't matter what replacements you have, you can get back to the same level.
It doesn't. I mean, one thing I will say is this might sound daft, the joints are all different. So the right hand hip joint, for instance, wasn't a full replacement. It was a resurfacing, where they resurfaced the cup in the pelvis and on the end of the upper end of the femur, as an interim measure for people that were young enough and or fit enough before going to full replacement. And the reason the consultant did that at the time, quite a few years ago now, was because it meant that you could then have an extra full replacement in hand, if you like, because they only last so long, and if you are using them hard, then eventually you're going to have a replacement, and each replacement takes more and more bone, is more and more difficult to do and manage with where they're cutting through the various tissue and so on. So if you didn't have to do a full replacement and you could do a resurfacing, then they would do that. When it needs doing again, it'll be a complete replacement, of course. But the one thing I noticed with that is that the range of movement is not as good as the original human hip, if you like. The angle range of movement in a couple of different planes is not as wide. So it's not an issue of pain or stiffness or anything like that. The joint just doesn't have that range of movement. The ceramic hip on the other side, which was a full replacement, was deliberately chosen to allow for the fact that they knew that I was active and wanted a range of it and could support it. So that you get different size head and socket combinations they use. So they were able to use one which allows me huge range of movement. It's great. I've got the absolute full, at least as full as it was on the original hip. May even be slightly more, I don't know. But it's great and much better than the right in that sense. And that's an interesting point, actually, because he's also saying that for people who've got a few more years behind them as well, and or perhaps aren't active, you get a different choice, a combination of head and socket, which allows a smaller range of movement, because otherwise the person can't support it. So it's to enable them to start using that small range of movement early on and get the best out of it without trying to think about going beyond the range of movement that they're used to and suddenly find they can't support it and having a fall or whatever.
Stability over mobility.
They're very good in that sense of matching what will work with the person they see in front of them. So yes, from my point of view, different. The knee is different as well. It's in the knee and foot and what have you are in slightly different positions and work in a slightly different plane, especially because of the hip and so on. But you just get used to that and you tune everything to that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't stop doing anything that you did before so far. And I'm still in the building up stage.
Yeah.
They talk about
we've got
a year, 18 months, even 2 years, you could still be seeing improvements. And at the moment I am at 8 months and seeing steady changes and improvements. So I can well see that. So.
Yeah, you're doing brilliant and you really took on your rehab on board. So well done you. It's all to your own hard work. So if you could give someone a message that might be on the list for a hip or knee replacement, what sort of message would you give to them that you wish that you had known before you had yours?
I would say if you've got any doubts about whether to go ahead or not, within what your consultant or your surgical team, whoever's working with you, decides is the appropriate time to you come into a bracket where they say, well, it's now time to go ahead, because often if a joint's not worn enough from when they do their investigations, they'll often want you to go on further with it before actually getting a replacement done. But then you come into a bracket eventually where it needs doing. And then you might be doubting it and thinking, oh, this is hurting a lot, or there's a problem, so what's going to happen afterwards? They're doing tens of thousands of these every year, and you recover and you get on with it. If you want to, if you're active anyway, and you want to do things, you can. And you can do some things straight away, easier with the hip initially, because the knee is just so painful and doesn't have that flexibility for the first few weeks. But you can still do things with it. You can move the leg around by flexing at the hip. You can put very slight pressure on it in different directions just to get the feeling. I found getting the feeling back into it was one of the big things, and that was just by doing a little often rather than trying to push it. And you come out the other side and it's fine. And you go lots of years where you can suddenly do all the things you used to do that you missed, and life becomes a bit more enjoyable again because of that. And you haven't had to just write things off and think, well, that's it, I can't do that anymore. That's never been a situation for me with the things I've had to have done and progressed through. There are lots of people who had much worse things and much worse situations, but with the sort of things I've had with replacement hips and knee and pins in my wrist and that sort of thing, you come out the other side and you get on with it. Different, but no worse, and in some instances better from my situation anyway. So I would say, have a good chat with the people that matter, like your surgical team and your physio and what have you, and be brave and get on with it. Longevity, these things, just like a human joint, have certain periods of times they last. My first hip was done in, I think it was 2009, so that's now 17 years. And that's the resurfacing one, and that's still not giving any indication at all that it might need replacing soon. So they do squeak from time to time. That was mine and the ceramic one. the ceramic one's the orchestra one, current weeks a month, but it's not giving a problem. Just the surfaces changing and in relation to each other. And also, if you're doing a different range of movements or exercises, or the same range of movements but with more weight or dynamic movement on it, then like any joint, it wears or pressures on the surface differently. And if you haven't used that area of the joint with that particular range of movements for a while, and then you're putting a bit of weight on it and using it, then that part of the surface hasn't been used recently, and so now is again. And we're sort of, in a sense, it's sort of equalising itself with the rest of the surface. That's the way I look at it. So you're using different parts of this side, but it's got such a wide range of movement. You're not using all of that all the time. So when you move around different parts of it, it settles itself down like a ball joint on the steering on your car or whatever. So it's the same analogy, really.
Yeah.
So, but it's not actually giving any issues at all. Obviously, it's inert, so there's no pain or anything there, no ache. So no, I'm happy with what we've achieved so far.
Yeah.
On the NHS.
Brilliant.
So,
It's just such a really inspiring, your story is so inspiring, and it motivates me when I go home and I'm thinking, oh, I can't be bothered, but then I'm like, well, Chris can do it, I can do it. So it really is inspiring. So thank you so much for coming on and telling your story as well. And I think lots of people are going to feel really inspired and motivated as well by it. So thank you so much.
well, thank you very much.
My pleasure.